it's almost, depending on the nature of a film, people want to seek out the most dramatic, spectacular locations. We're not talking about a psychological human relations drama, which this is adventure. Now, the rock tower, which I skied off, is actually a twin tower. It's a double tower. But when your angle is such that one of them is hidden behind the other one, it's one of the most spectacular towers on this planet. Well, they couldn't have a far enough away shot to show it that way because it wouldn't have made sense. It's a ski chase that culminates with Bond, with the bad guys pursuing him, someone who died during the ski chase. Bond suddenly skis over a cliff. And you think the gag is you think he's going to his death, or he just has a pack on his back, but it's really a parachute. That wouldn't have made sense. He's on the top of some narrow tower. So they could never even show the tower from a distance where you could see it. It's just a close-up. So that's a shot that never ends up in the cutting room floor. Now, the thing about how it almost didn't happen, and when it did happen, it was even better than it should have been. We went up there. We'd been in reconnaissance. They know the weather's bad up there. Maybe it's good at 25% of the time. 25% of the time, it's a stormy, you can't do anything even in summer. And then half the time it's what they call, it's called a Scottish mist. It's light drizzle. This is the far north. The first week we actually have good weather. And we're practicing, we're rehearsing, and practicing camera angles and throwing, stuff off the top to see what the wind's doing. And I'm getting a little worried, hey, weather like this doesn't last all the time. Then bad weather sets in. And and things are not looking good. And Ray DuPont, who I always thought, he was the guy in charge, maybe it was Johnny Bland, but I was mixed up on that, but Ray DuPont was the guy I was mostly dealing with. He's telling, in the beginning he said, Rick, if you don't think it's safe, don't do it. And that's the right way to be. Your life is more important. I don't care how much this thing is costing. You don't think it's safe. Now, the calls start coming from London. You have a crew there, a small crew, 11 people. One was a doctor. I thought maybe a mortician would have made more sense, to do a die thing. Well, not really. You could get injured, and it happened to me once before. Doesn't mean it's all or nothing. But, you don't own the cameras. You rent them, Panavision. They're always rented, the way that works. And they're not cheap, even for a Bond production. And I know the calls are coming from London. He can't insulate me from that. And it puts pressure. And I'm the one who suggests the location. But they agree to it. So now the Montreal Olympics is going on. They just installed satellite reception in this village. We're probably some of the only people watching it from further north than is happening. And as things get more serious and the weather stays bad, we're into the second week now, and they begin, and I'm telling them, there's microclimates 50 miles away. Maybe it's bad here. It could be good. They didn't want to use a helicopter more than they had, so it's expensive. It's like $400 an hour to fly it. You may say big deal for their budget, but still, it all adds up. So I say, we should check. So what happens now? A program begins with there's a morning flight where they fly up, check out the location, fly back, and there's a late afternoon flight. And we keep getting the word, no, it's bad up there too, it's rainy here, we can't shoot, we can't work. Then, and there's always someone from the film crew who's in the helicopter with the pilot. That evening it wasn't just drizzling, it was heavily raining. And I've never been a natural morning person. I'll make myself get up early for powder alpine skiing. But it's my turn to be the guy on that flight. And it's not like, usually you're going to jump at the chance to get a helicopter flight. But the weather's bad, it's sucked in, getting, the scenery is spectacular. Well, I'm kind of peeved off. It's obviously bad weather. And I stayed up late watching TV until the transmission ended. Why do I have to give? We go up there, sure enough, you can't shoot. Go back to the little lodge. Now the afternoon flight goes up. And they come back and they say, it's good, we could do it, we gotta hurry, we could do it. And I think, what the fuck? Who the fuck, are they kidding? You know, Renee said, don't do it if you think it's unsafe. How can this be possible? Well, we all jump in, and sure enough, there's clouds all over the place, but it's not precipitating. It's not raining or snowing. So we hurry up, and we barely get the thing. And what happened was, the landing is a glacier, but there was low clouds right on top of the glacier. So not only did you have them above, like you were framed both above and below, it made for an ethereal effect. It made it even better. But it was this brief window, and then they packed up, they left. Now I want to stay and try to climb the thing afterwards, like I did when I was there for the Canadian Club Ag, and I have my climbing partner I needed his help, you know, belaying me on the rope and everything. Well, I know, because I stayed behind when they went back, the next good day was like a week later. They never would have stayed another week. They would have quit. It was just getting too expensive. So they barely got it. They barely got it. And then there was the problem where I opened the chute lower than expected. The cameraman, and the chopper, which is out tangentially to where I'm skiing, shooting me at an angle. I dropped out of frame. I went lower than I could before I opened the chute. And the Canadian who's right below me, that's not going to be an important shot, that's just a cut in. The guy on the edge who could see with his camera, he saw the whole rundown, and he could also see me go into space. He says, I think I have a good shot. But that was never intended to be the master shot, just a backup or something's going to be edited in. So now the film, before everyone leaves, the film is sent down to the lab to get, you know, the daily report, and in Montreal, and they get the word, it's good or it's good enough, something like that. Well, thank goodness, because there would have been no second chance. Now, I'd had an expert from the company that had sewn together the parachute was with me for most of the time on Baffin Island, but he was getting time off from work, not being paid. Finally, he had to leave. So when I did the jump, I repacked the chute myself. I didn't know until I went down to Southern California, and the next time I used it, I packed it wrong. I had what's still the only malfunction I've had in my life, where I had to cut away from it and open the reserve, which it was not any, it would have been kind of dramatic, the one shoots bad, then he has to, but it wasn't the Union Jack. It wasn't the shot it was supposed to be. So if we'd had to do it a second time, I would have had a malfunction up there, and it never would have been the shot that it was intended to be. It was I'd packed the chute wrong. That's how inexperienced I was. I thought the guy who, if he'd still been up there from the company that made the chute, had gone back to California. So, and I was so inexperienced, I couldn't even pack it, you know, the lines were all twisted.
Rick, one question. When you were on the cliff, when you guys were preparing for the stunt, what happened there? Like the moments before you took off?
Oh, yeah, for that was the bad part. You know, what happened in the beginning, I wanted to get it over with. When we had all those delays for rain, this is where the superstition comes in, I started getting worried. You know, I'm not familiar with this cliff. I haven't climbed it, you know, many times like El Capitan. Spent the night on the side of it, sleeping on ledges and hammocks and things like that back then. And I was feeling pretty uneasy. As the weather stayed bad, I was actually rooting again. I don't think I ever wrote about this. I was actually rooting it. I didn't want it to happen. I figured, another day of life. I didn't want to do it. So suddenly, supposedly we have a chance to do it. So anyway, that's what I signed on for. That's what I said I was going to do. That's what I'm getting paid to do. Again, if I thought it was impossible, I'm going to die, Of course you're not going to do it if it's an unambiguous matter like that. So the last bit, they checked with me. I think it was John Glenn. So yeah, of course John Glenn was there. Somehow I'd forgotten that he was there. But yeah, he was the one on the radio, and he I know what you're alluding to earlier. This has, been written about. He asks if I'm ready, and I say yeah, and then he, now he tells all the cameras start rolling, and that's it. Now the bit that was written about, I have no memory about it. He says, remember, you could say it better than I do. You're James Bond. I don't remember that. All I remember is, he tells me all the cameras are ready to go. Are you ready? And it's either yes or no. And if I say yes, that means I got to do the damn thing again for the fourth time. It was only supposed to be once, but I've broken that promise. And I say yeah, and then film's expensive, right? Cameras are rolling and nothing to do but do the thing. But that's my memory of the deal. The bit about you're not Rick, you're James Bond. Again, I don't believe in supernatural, action heroes. That's a cute story. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. I have no reason to doubt him. But that's what you want, Uwe? You got it.